One. And we're live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wolf. We got Mr. Robert here. We're back talking about all the things going on in the market. We got Bitcoin and stocks having some nice green. We had like government shutdown news in the middle of the night last night. Passes the Senate. Now it's on to the next kind of thing to see if the government's going to reopen. Robert's been tweeting a bunch of stuff about it. One of the charts that was fascinating was like when the ChatGPT was introduced and the jobs just going straight down. And we've got the 50-year mortgages that Trump was talking about. We've got a Bitcoin at a pretty contentious point as well. There's chaos and fury on the timeline right now. It is absolutely bonkers out there right now in macro and Bitcoin land and all the things. And so I'm excited and blessed to have Mr. Robert Infra here for Infonomics YouTube. I'm gonna track down a couple of YouTube links here as well. If you guys want to watch on YouTube, let me drop this down right below the stream. If you're watching on X, highly recommend you guys check us out on YouTube. And we'll kick this one off. Robert, how's it going, man?
Good. Yeah, a lot going on. 50-year mortgage, kind of crazy. So yeah, I did the math, and other people have done the math too. And you don't actually save any money because too many people are assuming that the 50-year mortgage is going to have the same interest rate as a 30-year mortgage, and it's not. For the same reason that a 10-year treasury doesn't have the same interest rate as a 30-year treasury. And yeah, the math actually doesn't work out. The monthly payment is basically the same, assuming that there's probably a normal steepness in that yield curve. We know from California, they've tried it in California, and there's about 50 to 150 basis points between what the 30-year mortgage rate is and what the 50-year mortgage rate is. And yeah, the math doesn't work once you assume 100 basis point spread between the two.
I'd seen Adam Beliv talk about, he was like, if you were to just roll with the 50-year though, you could take that extra money and throw it into Bitcoin. But I was like it sounds like a good write-up, but you're mentioning that it wouldn't be like the math doesn't add up either way.
Well, so the math doesn't add up, but what that means is they're going to have to come in to buy down the rate. So yeah, money printing, the only way you have a 50-year mortgage rate equal to the 30-year mortgage rate, the only way that happens is if the government is coming in to somehow artificially suppress the interest rate by buying the bond. So yeah, the bond market, the free market would never loan money at 30 and 50 at the same interest rate. There's going to always be a premium. And the only way you negate that premium is if you print money and buy down the.
Yeah. I've seen this post from earlier.
Yeah. So
kind of talking about it here.
Yeah, that would be what they do. There's a report. Let me find it. That was really good.
If you want to share your screen, you definitely can. By the way, I was just pointing this up just to make it visual.
Yeah, I came across it when I was putting together that window. I came across it when I was putting together the video on the 50-year. It's not working.
It's not.
I keep hitting share screen and it's not. Let me try it from this way.
Oh, let me take off mine maybe.
Oh yeah, maybe not. So.
We should be able to share multiple at once though.
Yeah, this has happened before. I'll just tell people it's great. You can Google it. Southwest Public Policy Institute, the case against 50-year mortgages. How will Washington's housing fix entrench debt, inflate prices, and undermine the American dream? That's like the subtitle. Report, the case against 50. I would highly recommend people read that. I mean, they basically predict that the only way it works is if the government comes in. And so if you're talking about a 50-year mortgage, kind of by definition, I guess where I was going with that, by definition, you're talking about more government involvement in the housing market and the bond market, which is generally not a good sign. But yeah, I mean, I guess the math could work. Like if you do what people are saying, where you take the difference that you're saving, you put it in this asset with a CAGR of whatever, I guess that math would work out, but you're making a lot of assumptions that
Yeah.
might not be safe necessarily. I think that like the problem with the 50 years, you're paying, there's like no progress on the principal until like 30 years in, really. I did a show with Zach Loft on Instagram. He's does housing stuff, and he did the math, and like, you know, the amortization of a 50-year, you're only making like $5 of principal payment on a median house of like 500K. The first, I forget how many years, you're only making like basically $5 to $15 worth of principal payment. The vast majority of it is interest. And you can see there's amortization curves of a 30-year versus a 50-year. It's pretty wild. Like you're not making any progress on the principal. You're really just paying interest until, you know, 10 to 20 years in. Then you start making, it's kind of a asymptotic or a exponent logarithmic curve. So yeah, it's not good for the homeowner. It's not good for the home buyer that wants to buy a home, because what this will do is artificially subsidize the demand side. And so you lead to more demand, higher prices, and you have higher home prices. And you get into the cycle. I put that meme that is from like ages ago. I just need to subsidize demand. You okay, son? I just need to subsidize demand. You know, like that's kind of the world we've gotten into. That's you know, Raoul Paul and others have talked about this. You know, you have to have nominal growth. You have to have price appreciation of various different assets, especially housing. The median boomer is so poor, like poor outside of their home equity, that the only way that they're going to be able to like retire is if the housing market doesn't crash. Like so not only do you have like the kind of broader economy, you have to run that hot. And you can't really, you know, every recession exponentially hurts more from a debt to GDP standpoint. Not only that, not only do you have to run the broad economy pretty hot, but you have to have like continual asset price inflation. Luke Gromen said that the S&P 500 must appreciate by like 10 to 15%, or the deficit starts to blow out. So it's pretty wild that like we've gotten into a world where the stock market has to go up 10 to 15%. You know, it's almost double the long run average of the S&P 500 annual return. So we're getting into a world where we must have, you know, call it 50 to 100% of the average return over the past 80 years, just to not have the deficit increase, just to keep it constant. Like that's kind of, you know, la la land territory. And what they're doing with housing, 50-year mortgage, and you get the sense that they're trying to prop up this bubble that, you know, still has a ways to go, in my opinion. Yeah.
I was going to say, has anything moved the needle on that? Like as far as the speed at which maybe we're rifling towards a wall?
The Challenger job cuts was kind of, that came out the past week, last week, I guess. That was pretty significant. So you had the highest October layoffs going back to 2003. But you also had hiring intentions within that report that were expected to pick up. So net, maybe it's really not that bad. I tend to lean toward discounting it. You know, I mean, the highest layoffs in October going back 22 years. I feel like you should pay attention to that. But yeah, hiring intention show, you know, we're picking up as well in that report. And really, we don't have much government data. ADP came in last week. That was stronger than expected, 42K. Expectation was 30K. So that's good. You know, ADP, like we only need the US economy with net migration going negative now. We only need about 30,000 jobs per month. That's it. We got used to huge non-farm payrolls. We got used to like, you know, 220,000 jobs added to the US economy last month. And that's kind of, what we needed because we were importing so much labor. But now that immigration policy side is starting to go the other way, that break even rate is starting to go the other way too. So now the break even rate for employment's only about 30,000 according to the Fed. So ADP, comes in 42K. It's like, okay, that's fine. The economy's fine, but we don't have that much data. We only have ADP. University of Michigan came in just record low in current economic conditions. And that survey goes all the way back to 1952. So 70 something years, University of Michigan consumer sentiment survey. Sentiment was second lowest on record. Current economic conditions were the lowest on record by a pretty good margin too. But, if in the K-shaped economy, the upper leg of the K, if assets still continue to go up, if the stock market's doing okay, those rich, the upper leg of the K, will continue to spend because they'll feel that wealth effect from the appreciating assets. They'll continue to spend. They make up about 50% of all consumer spending, right? So you kind of play it out. It's like the consumer, the median American might be, their sentiment could be, it is poor, but does it matter? Like, this is the conversation that, unfortunately, we've kind of gotten to. The median American doesn't matter. In the broad economic sense, in the world that I watch GDP and payrolls and all this kind of stuff, the median American hasn't mattered for years. The only thing that really matters is the top 10, 20%. And that's not to say that they don't matter as a person or that their economic pain doesn't matter, because that's kind of my whole thing with the silent depression. So yeah, but from a broad economic sense, they don't matter. So the only thing that matters to the bubble popping is that upper leg of the K. If they're buoyed by asset price returns and wealth effect, then they'll continue to spend, and kind of the show goes on. We see from Trump that, like, if you felt like the bubble was starting to kind of wobble, and starting to kind of slow down and curl over, Trump is coming out and going, and that's how I think the Trump admin is interpreting the election result in New York. I think they're interpreting that as like, oh boy, they're starting, like, the people are pissed. They're starting to, like, go the other way. And so, like, next thing you know, within 7 days, there's stimmy checks, there's, all this stuff. So, I think that, like, they will do everything they can to kind of reheat the economy if they feel like it's starting to cool off. I think that, it's probably starting to cool off a bit. The government shutdown didn't help. That was sapping about 18 billion per week in GDP. So that wasn't helping. We had layoffs associated with the shutdown. That wasn't helping. Liquidity was pretty poor. So that would have eventually trickled into the asset side with probably the stock market, some sort of sharp VAR shock in the stock market, which could have caused the wealth of it, right? So you start kind of thinking second, third order effects. And it was time to end the shutdown because that's part of the reason the liquidity picture was so bad was TGA. So it's all interconnected. But yeah, I did kind of get a sense over the past week or two that we were starting to kind of curl over. But right away they came in and they're not going to allow anything to happen.
Yeah. It does feel like nothing ever happens. And actually, speaking of, well, I guess that would be the opposite of this, but I've seen this from earlier, which I believe you had commented on a little bit. We just brought it up a second ago. Was on the stimulus package, $2,000 tariff dividend. Interesting stuff. You were not a big fan of this. I saw your response to this, and I see Ryan's also in the chat. He has a question here as well. What happens if Trump says we're taking tariffs to eliminate federal income tax from everyone?
So it would, that's what they promised, by the way. Howard Lutnick promised you that the tariffs would be implemented, but they would eliminate the income tax. This was what they explicitly promised the American people. So yeah, the math could work from the math that I've done. that what 150K, maybe not 150K, but certainly like 100-ish, I think was the cutoff the last time I did the math. The tariff revenue is about 350 billion per year annualized out. And the bottom 70 to 80% of Americans, they could eliminate the income tax.
Wow.
With 350 billion in tariff revenue. Yeah, they could.
And you're thinking this is not going to happen, or you're thinking this is?
No, I think it sounds too good. It would be too revolutionary. It would be too fresh. It would be too nice. It would be, you know what I mean? Like, it's too good. Something that good could never happen. Like, unfortunately.
Benefits too many of the normal people, just like, honestly.
Well, the other thing too, so the math there, 350 billion collected, annualized out with the tariff revenue, $2,000, the labor force right now, he said per person, I think. Yeah, to most yeah. So he said maybe to every American, but if you did every person in the labor force is, number one, we're not collecting trillions of dollars. That's insane. We're collecting like 350 billion a year, which is a lot, which is enough to do some great things. You know, like, I don't know why he has to lie. But yeah, 170 million in the labor force. You multiply 170 million by 2,000, you get about 350 billion. So if they do this and they give every person in the labor force $2,000, that would basically exhaust or deplete every single dollar of tariff revenue for an entire year. An entire year's worth of tariff revenue would be gone in an instant if they did that. They could do it. The math could work, but what you would be doing right now, that tariff revenue is helping to buffer or reduce the deficit, right?
Yeah.
The Treasury is collecting 350 billion a year. Well, so what that means is the Treasury doesn't have to issue as much debt to cover the Treasury's expenses, to cover the federal government's expenses. If all of a sudden you take that 350 billion in revenue that the Treasury is getting and you flip it around right away and give it right back to the people, well, what that means is the Treasury is going to have to, the deficit functionally increases. Technically, it doesn't, technically it might not actually increase, but like functionally, in terms of debt issuance, they would have to go from collecting 350 billion, and that goes into the TGA that can fund their needs. It would go from that to, oh, now we have to issue 350 billion more in debt, which would probably not be good for the bond market. And it should be noted, the betting markets, last I checked, only had the probability of this at like 10%. So it's like Taco, everyone is just, he just says stuff and it's not going to happen.
We've also seen, I'd be curious, I don't know if I've gotten your, maybe we have talked about this on a space. They're all blending together now. But with all this from the average person, we've seen prediction markets just go absolutely crazy. And people are putting a lot of, like, I don't know what the right word is, but like they'll look at like a Polymarket or a Kalshi or something like that. I don't know which one you think makes most sense, but like there's multiple of them out there. A Kalshi's one, or Kalshi, or Kalshi. Kalshi's one, Polymarket's another. What's it called? Basically, everyone's just like talking about it. It's coming up everywhere. I'm curious on your thoughts on this, like more macro. I know from a lot of the Bitcoiners are thinking this is not obviously a good habit probably to build. And maybe to the normal person, this isn't taking up that much of their mental, but maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, to me, it shows a little bit of like, this seems to be like, this is my way out. It's like, I'm going to bet on this thing in 6 years. It's going to come true or whatever.
Well, it's a direct result of the dollar and the dollar's reserve currency status. That how I see the betting market stuff, Kalshi and Polymarket, and this is like hyper financialization of society, where everything can be bet on, everything can be gambled, everything is a market, you know, like this is some kind of like weird Ayn Rand like dystopia, you know, like everyone talks about Ayn Rand and the utopia like version of an Ayn Rand world, But like this seems like the dystopian version of an Ayn Rand world where you have like all the bad parts of like capitalism or whatever you want to call it, right? Where it's just like everything can be bet on. Everything is a market. Everything is a gamble, you know, to try to make money. And yeah, like I would point out that if you total up all the lottery ticket revenue for a year, Americans gamble over $100 billion on lottery tickets every year.
Wow. Jeez.
So that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
It feels like what we're seeing is like a copy paste of the old world, just planted on the digital realm, which is infinite. It's quite literally infinite, you know what I mean? Like it feels like that's what it is. I remember like 3 years ago, like Gary Vee was like all over it. It's gonna like all these things. Like there's gonna be like TikTok lives where you can like vacuum, and while you're vacuuming, you're gonna earn like coins and tickets. I was like, why?
Yeah.
And I was just like, I mean, probably, but I was like, and then I think of movies like Blade Runner, where like everyone's got like these bounties so they can go claim, and some of it's or the Tron, these movies that are just, you know, based in this other reality that are starting to become like, you know, it feels like years away. I mean, I'm not sure exactly with products and like how good they'll be.
Dystopia.
Techno dystopia. But we've seen certain products come out where like it looks the part. Like I've seen Optimus robots doing like karate and kung fu, and I'm like,
I mean, look, it's cool. I use Kalshi and Polymarket, right? I won't be a hypocrite. I'll tell it how it is. Like the fact that you can have such a low friction way to make a market about there is wisdom in markets, right? This is one thing that I've learned. This is like one core truth that I've learned is that there is wisdom in markets. Not all the time, but most of the time, you know, collective. What is a market? What is a candlestick? It is, you know, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of market participants, you know, debating on price. That's all it is. And it's the consensus at that point in time, given the liquidity and right. So yeah, the fact that like Polymarket, there I can go and see what are the betting odds for Trump actually coming through with this check. That's kind of cool. And for me, it's helpful, you know, for like what I do. But for the median American, is it good for our society that we're hyper financializing to the point that like everyone I know is trading 0-day options on Robinhood? Is that good society? Like, is that really there? Look, at least if it was stocks, you could make the argument, which some kind of very hyper libertarian people do, like hyper libertarian capitalist sort of types. You like could theoretically make the argument if it was with stocks, if these young people were like, you know, all on Robinhood and they were trading stocks, you could make the like technical argument that they're providing capital for a productive purpose. And there's like a whole spiel that they can give you about that. But like they're trading 0-day options. They're trading a derivative contract. And yeah, the market maker on the other side might hedge by buying or shorting, like, but like it's a derivative. It's not even you can't even claim, oh, they're providing capital for a productive purpose. So, okay, you know, they're buying Meta shares. Meta can then go take their capital and go invest in a productive purpose that increases productivity for 100 other people, right? And you get like, there is the potential for that kind of argument to be made with a bunch of people gambling on Robinhood. The problem is they're all gambling on derivatives, which are, by definition, are kind of disconnected from, you know, you're not buying equity. You're buying a contract with a market maker. So yeah, it's not a good direction for society. Like, you know, back when my parents were coming of age, like the smartest people were not going to work for Wall Street to build a high frequency trading algorithm to exploit tenths of a cent. And, you know, like, it's like, you look at our GDP and like young people are finally kind of waking up to the economic reality that like, it's all kind of fake, you know, like it's all kind of like, when you get down to it, like when it really matters, right? When the power goes out, when there's a war, can we survive as people, as humans, as animals? Can we survive? Half of our country is on some sort of medication that they need to survive, right? Can we provide them with those medications? The answer is no, we can't. Can we provide artillery shells and missiles and warheads to our Navy and to our Marine Corps? The answer is no, we can't.
Mm.
You know, like when it really comes down to what really matters, we can't make anything, and we can't. We have no capacity to do anything productive that really actually matters at the end of the day. Now, that's not to say there's not companies still based in America that can make real tangible things. You know, there are, but like in aggregate, our economy has become this, you know, bunch of boomers passing back and forth, a bunch of overvalued wooden boxes, a bunch of algorithmic trading firms scraping tenths of a cent off of transactions and market makers, and you know, like a bunch of kids gambling 0-day options and meme coins. And it's like, what even, you know, you look at the biggest companies, the Mag 7, what do they really provide? I mean, technology's cool, you know, like Google is cool. They've provided this stream of income for me, right? That I never imagined. You know, like it's not all bad. I try to never be black and white, but when you zoom out and go, you know, on a net basis, like, is this really productive for society? Is society better off? Are we healthier? Are we happier? Are we better off financially? I mean, young people are not better off financially with all these 0-day options. And most of them lose money. 90-something% of day traders lose money. Well, there's dozens of studies about that, right? So like, we're not financially better off. We're not mentally better off. Antidepressant prescriptions are up 13x in the past like 25, 30 years. Yeah, 13x. So we're not emotionally better off, you know, and it's like, yeah, you know, is it helpful for me as a guy with like a macro YouTube channel to be able to like go see, oh, there's billions of dollars being changed hands about the odds of XYZ that matters to the bond market and therefore matters to me, and, you know, like, sure. But sometimes I think people need to be a little more honest with like self-interest, and, you know, like, look, Google is great thing, right? I remember when it came out, I was a kid and I was using computers, and I remember Google when it started, and like to see what it's transformed into, to see YouTube, like the educational content on YouTube, right? What I try to do, I might fail, but you know, I learned so much valuable, priceless information from free videos on YouTube. That is excellent, right? You used to have to go to a library and read, and we had at my house the volume of encyclopedia. It was 24 books or 26. Each letter had a book, and you would have to go pull a physical book and like go to the page, right? Find it was alphabetical. And like now you have the wealth, especially with AI, right? Now you have like, it's insane, right? It for me is provided immense value, but I think that, you know, it's okay for people, right? Google and therefore, and, you know, and YouTube and everything that I have with that is great. But like, we can also admit that like we should probably be able to make life-saving drugs for our own people and focus on that rather than a bunch of algorithms and tech platforms and, you know, that sort of thing. We should be able to make warheads to protect our people, because we lost a proxy war to a country with 1/12 of our GDP because we can't make anything anymore. We have so completely hollowed out our industrial base that we couldn't functionally arm Ukraine to the degree that they needed to be armed. And we lost a proxy war in Eastern Europe to a country with 1/12 of our GDP. So it brings up the question, like, what is GDP? Does it even matter, right? If a country with 1/12 of our GDP can physically annihilate and violently harm, right? Like, at the end of the day, what is a country other than to provide safety for its people? Well, part of that is to be able to, you know, produce warheads and have a navy, and, you know, and if we can't make anything because we've so hollowed out our industrial base as a result of decades of, you know, large trade deficits and the dollar's reserve currency status, then arguably like we're getting to that end stage Triffin's dilemma sort of thing. And I think this is like what's sad, or I said upsetting, I don't know if that's the right word, but like I was cautiously optimistic, right? Bessent is brilliant dude. You know, Myron I think is very smart. I know people think he's not. I think he's on the right track with a lot of things. JD Vance very clearly gets it. He questioned Jerome Powell. There's testimony on YouTube, you can find it, of him pressing Jerome Powell on the downsides of the dollar's reserve status. So JD Vance clearly gets it. He comes from the Rust Belt. He wrote an entire book. I haven't read it yet, but he wrote an entire book basically on Triffin's dilemma and the real world consequences that he suffered, you know, as a kid, and that he witnessed firsthand. So he clearly gets it, you know. Trump doesn't, I don't think. He never really got it. But there are people that clearly really understand kind of complicated, obscure concepts, right? Triffin's dilemma, Dutch disease, right? Like all these bizarre, nerdy, wonky sort of concepts that have very real world consequences to the country, and accurately diagnosed, I think, a lot of problems in America. But then like, it's like I watch them just be stupid. And it's like, the guys, like I'm not in either side. I don't shoot. If an idea is good and I think it's going to generally help kind of in the aggregate, if I think it's a good idea, it's a good idea. I don't care who presents it to me. You know, so yeah, it's not a political thing. Like I just wish that they had better ideas recently, other than 50-year mortgages, being a debt slave to a bank that already makes $280 billion per year in credit card interest. Every year, people in just the interest component, not anything with principal, or so I'm not talking about credit card debt balance, just interest that the banks earn from providing credit. They make $280 billion per year in credit card interest. Like, wow. Are we going to try to like further that, you know, like, oh, the big banks aren't making enough in interest, we got to introduce the 50-year mortgage. So we produce a bunch of perpetual debt slaves. It's like, that's not a great idea, dude. Like, guys, I thought you were the ones that got it, you know. It's that sort of
based. I think it has to be incentive based. Like there can't, because you're right. Like there are some things where you're like, what? Like that doesn't make a little bit of sense. But like every time you're trying to pick apart like an industry or pick apart a problem, you realize, like, especially in politics, you hit walls that are placed there on purpose. And you're like, oh, this is why this won't ever get passed. Like there's no reason this guy would ever approve it, because this guy's incentive will never let. And it's just like this whole thing. It's like you're like, oh, okay, like. Now I see why people get it, and like Elon tried to come in with Doge and just throws his hands up, and it's like, I don't know if there's actually anything here. And so going on Rogan, and he's like, yeah, there's some seriously dark stuff here that's going to get me killed if I ever talk about how people make money.
There's a lot of entrenched interest, right? That's the problem. Trump's it's so hot here in LA, in the desert of LA. There's a lot of entrenched interest in government. And this is what Trump ran into actually the first term that made it really unremarkable, right? Like there's a lot of talk, right, that this person Trump is this, you know, this thing, right? But like if you look back on the first term, I remember it was unremarkable. Nothing really changed in anyone's real life, right? It was very unremarkable. And yeah, like, you know, his cabinet was filled. There was people like John Bolton in his cabinet, you know, and it's like he ran on draining the swamp, and then he filled his cabinet with the swamp, and nothing really changed during his first term. Now you see, you know, them coming in, and like, even this time where you're like, okay, they got the right people, they're on the right message, you know, Main Street over Wall Street, right? It was like all the right things. And then we see Doge and they give up. And it's like, wait, like you guys were on the right track. Yes. The TV was screaming every day, CNN, MSNBC, they were ABC, NBC, CBS, all of them. They were whining incessantly about Doge. And it was like, okay, you're over the target. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they gave up. They cut 1.2%, I think, of the federal outlays, and they gave up. And it's like, guys, I thought you got it. You know, it's like you watch that, and you know, it's like the fell for it again meme. But for me, I kind of am skeptical of everyone, and like, kind of, I've learned throughout my life to like, kind of have that like presuppose that people are going to fail you, you know, especially politicians.
Yes.
I think that's a safe. I think people should. I think their mental health would be way better if everyone just kind of assumed the system is like completely broken. No one is coming to save you. The politician is not going to save you, right? Like if everyone kind of just recognize you're kind of on your own.
Well, think about like one thing I noticed was like because like we're like players in the game on like a small. I mean, you're probably doing better than I. Well, I know you're doing better than I. You know this stuff way higher than I do. But even in the media game, I noticed that like the pressure you can feel from above is not exactly like a lot of times they're not going to come out and say, hey, you can't say this. But for example, say you know, Wolf gets to a point where Saylor reaches out. It's like, hey, I want you on the next, you know, shareholders meeting, whatever, when you ask a couple questions, but you can't ask me about this.
It's not explicit.
Yeah. And you're like, and you know, if you go on, you're like, well, if I want to get reinvited, I should ask kind of a layup question that really like makes them look good. Same with interviews. If I'm interviewing someone big, I'm like, do I want to put him on the spot right now? Do I want to hold him accountable for something he said a year ago? And you're playing this game, and you realize the deeper you get in, the higher up you want to go. Like, what am I going to do if I interview Treasury, you know, Scott Bessent, and I want to flame him for something? I'm not going to, because I want to have him back on. And it's like this thing where you're like, oh, yeah, it's almost it's a game of incentives. You're like, it's not even that it's almost that you must necessarily say what you said, where it's like it is a zero-sum game in terms of like you will get failed because like you just aren't high enough priority. Like your priorities just aren't high enough, because once the guy or the girl who gets in that position to maybe make that change, they're in there and they're like, crap. If I do this, like, I don't know if I can anymore.
Sclerotic. The system is sclerotic. Like it is by definition kind of not prone to want to change, you know? And like especially with like kind of the degree to which it's gotten with like the boomers, you know, like in their interest versus the needs of the young people and like that whole conflict. It's the system doesn't like change, right? Like by definition, the system is designed. The purpose of a system is what it does, right? Is like the engineering saying. I'm not an engineer, but Lynn Alden has said that a couple times. And yeah, if you look at what the system does, it perpetrates power and wealth and concentrates power and wealth. That is what our system kind of broadly does. So that's kind of the purpose of it. And look, a government at the end of the day, to some degree, is going to need to do that by definition. But yeah, like things have gotten to the point where most politicians in Washington, D.C. are so completely out of touch with the median American, economically, financially, like people are in so much pain. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Everything just seems to always get worse, especially since 2020, right? Like all that whole thing, that whole event, it seems like things have just gotten like way worse every single year. And people, you know, there's a breaking point. I think we're a ways away from that breaking point though. But yeah, it's unfortunate. System doesn't like change by definition. And I kind of feel that too I kind of feel that too, you know, like, oh, if I make this comment about a certain policy, this, you know, side of my followers, it's like,
you see why people are gravitating toward like Nick Fuentes types, where he'll just say he does not care. He's like, I need to say this because if I don't, you can't know that I'm not bought. He goes, you know that if I say these words, you know that I'm not bought. And you're like, wow. Our generation is
it makes perfect sense. Like he comes across as refreshing, right? Like it sounds crazy. You turn on the TV, they will tell you They will call him all sorts of crazy names, right? That probably like we shouldn't even say. But you ask the average Zoomer dude, like just the average 22-year-old guy, you ask him and he'll be like, oh man, yeah, it's like a breath of fresh air.
They're watching Nick Fuentes. They're
Yeah,
watching the
like
guys who are just do not care. They'll say anything.
yeah,
It's
and like
crazy.
that, that's kind of what I try to do with economics, right? Other people do it too.
Sure.
It's not like a unique thing to me, but like George Gammon kind of tries to do that, and Heresy Financial tries to do that.
Mhm.
So I try to do it with like the economic truths that they don't want you to know. I think I'm better at it personally, but yeah, like when it comes to especially politics and especially politics, and then especially cultural issues, it is just like, yeah, I feel the pressure to like kind of keep away from certain things, especially the bigger, because the bigger your audience gets, the bigger the numbers are, right? Like if you assume 30% of the country is hardcore Democrat, 30% is hardcore MAGA Republican. If I say something that is like hardcore, very direct, this person is a moron and this policy is idiotic. If I lose 30% of 500, that's no big deal. If I lose 30% of 28,593, it's a different story. So yeah, you feel like, I kind of feel a little bit, but I try my best. I hope people know that I try my best to like just, say what I believe, be honest, be straightforward. I think it helps, like what I was saying earlier, I think it helps. I think people would be better served if they spoke out more against things that were like maybe a little outside of their own self-interest. Like imagine if the boomers came out and instead of telling you to work harder, they said, look, we understand that we've created this housing nationalized boomer pension fund of housing, unaffordable housing, but like we recognize it's a problem. The difference between that and what they do, what the vast majority of them do, is night and day, So I think that's a step in the right direction, is to, if more people were just a little more honest with, even if it's against your own self-interest, like, I think, seeing shades of nuance is another important skill, I guess you could say, that's been lost, like shades nowadays, it's,
I like that a lot.
Gray nuance, yeah.
That's why I think like there are certain people in our spaces that it's just easier to have harder conversations with, even if we go down deep in the conversation. Like there are some like in our spaces, there are certain people where I'm just like, there's some guys where I'm like, you can have basically every conversation, it will still be civil, and you can say something and that they're going to pick up the essence of what you're trying to say. They're not going to just zoom in on something and steel man you and
fallacy.
Yeah. And so those conversations can happen. I think there are way more people like you and like, people like Eric Rice who are just kind of like, they're respectful, they're civil, they're willing to have the hard conversations, but they're not looking to necessarily attack you. There are probably way more people who are like that. It's just, it's a bit more sexy, maybe a bit more appealing and entertaining when you get the people shouting at each other. But it's like, it gets kind of old. I mean, maybe it's good. Maybe it's really good we're doing so many. I mean, you're in spaces like probably every day at this point. I definitely am hosting space every day, so I'm definitely tired of it most of the time. But like, if they're tuning in once or twice a week, like maybe that's why those spaces get so big. I mean, the shouting matches like Peter Schiff versus XYZ Bitcoiner are going to pull thousands of people live, and it's just going to be people talking right past each other. Like if CZ and Peter Schiff have this Bitcoin versus gold debate, it's going to be like a total theatric.
Food fight.
If it's food fight here, what you're seeing on TV is 1,000x bigger. It's nonsense. There are these world economic round tables, and it'll be like Larry Fink, Jamie, and you're like, dude, you think they're going to broadcast the real conversation on TV, like for people to watch
from the WEF?
Yeah, like even if they did, you wouldn't understand what they're talking about. I mean, of course they're not.
I mean, if you look in the trading world at the #1 day trader on YouTube, having kind of come from like, done that side of the world.
Yeah.
The number one day trader on YouTube, or at least he was, his entire shtick is to be confrontational and to be abrasive and to be like, I don't know if he's even actually like that, but like you go through his timeline, his profile, or you watch his, his YouTube, and he dials it up to 12,
Yeah.
and it works, right? Like, who's the number one day trader on YouTube, according to views or follower count or whatever, right? Like, it's this guy who's like, super abrasive. And so it's like, maybe there's a poor incentive there, or like the fact that the incentive is there is a reflection poorly of what people actually want. Because, like, I don't know, I talk about yield curves and try to explain it to people, and like, that's never going to get me 10 million followers. Like some of these, like I sometimes I go through just for fun, and look at some of the kind of like normie YouTube land.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's wild.
It is. Oh, I will hear people on TV, or my dad will say something to me. I'm like, Dad, we've parsed that apart for 11 hours already. Like, what do you mean? Like, how is the first time hearing about it? Or on TV, you'll hear these guys high level, and they'll ask this just like basic question. You'll hear them say something. You're like, do you even know what you just said? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Or you're like, you just made that up, or whatever it is. One thing I noticed, that it was like a trend I noticed in 2022, because I was deep in like crypto land, NFT land at this point. It was like my first foray into the crypto world. And I noticed that there were just like random kids who would start a project. They would catch heat for a little bit, and they'd sell out their collection, make $2 million. And at that point, we were in the thick of it. We had no idea if it was going to lead anywhere. I was so brand new. I just was like, hey, I guess it's possible one could turn to Pokemon. Like, I have no idea. Like, it doesn't seem like that make any sense for it if you're starting from a backwards incentive where, I don't know. Like, I guess, like, yeah, if you're early, then maybe, like, I was so new to it. But I remember thinking, like, oh, it's so weird. Like, none of these things are based in reality. Like, it has nothing to do with what's being, it's purely an attention-based economy now. Yeah. And that was like a huge click, because you talked about, you're like, nobody in our 20s right now who's on Robinhood is like, oh man, can't wait to buy Ford stock. Yeah. Or like no one's doing that. They're looking at like, oh, what's the hottest one? They're like, oh, Nvidia, I like the guy's jacket. He's got nice hair that probably isn't real, and he's like a crazy tan, and like he's good looking, old Asian guy. Like this is the guy I want. Or Elon. And it's a fascinating world, dude. Like,
yeah, they're not reading The Intelligent Investor and like looking for undervalued cash flow. They're not building some DCF analysis in Excel and going through earning statements and finding maybe that's the undervalued company.
I see a question here from Ryan. He says, Robert, this is from a few minutes ago. We were on a prior topic, but I thought this was interesting.
Before we hate the idea, what if they said 50 are only available to first time who put 20% down, and the government will give you 1.5% below prime? Yeah. No, I don't think that would, I mean, yeah, that's a lot better. It's possible. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Look, the problem is, how do you get 1.5% below prime? Government prints money to buy the, so the free market would never come up with that product.
Dang. That's interesting.
But yeah, there's always, it's not to say, again, kind of on an aggregate basis.
Dark says definitely my looks. Good to see you, Dark. Good to see you, brother. By the way, I was going to say, so didn't know if there's, actually, Robert, I was going to say, if there's any charts you want me to pull up while you're talking, by the way, just drop them here in the chat, and I can pull them up while you're talking.
Man, I don't know why my screen share is not working. I literally have all of my slides from that housing video showing the 30-year mortgage minus the 10-year treasury.
It's on the video, right? It's on YouTube. It's the YouTube video. All right, so I could probably just pull up the video and just share a screen and mute the tab or something.
It's okay. It's all right. They're all there. I go through them. Man, it's so crazy. Yeah, look, like I'm looking right now at the credit card interest rate minus the 10-year treasury yield. So back in 1995, the spread between the credit card interest rate, the average credit card interest rate, and the 10-year treasury yield was 9.5%. So for the average person in 1995, the interest rate on their credit card was 9.5% higher than what the 10-year treasury yield was. Now that number is 18.7. So it's doubled. The spread that the banks are making has doubled on credit cards. $280 billion per year in credit card interest. Like you create a situation where you impoverish huge swath of the country, especially, young people, especially bottom 70-ish% of income earners. You impoverish them. You make them go into debt, which by definition, as a twin deficit country, we can only accumulate debt. We are net unproductive. So, but that's in the aggregate. On the individual side, you impoverish them to the point that the only way they can survive is debt.
Yeah.
Even more debt. And then you get to charge them interest on money you printed out of thin air, right? When a bank is going to extend a loan, the vast majority of the time, they are just creating that money out of thin air by extending the loan. There's the offsetting asset and the liability. Boom, they just printed money, and then they get to collect interest on it. And not only that, but the degree of interest that they're able to collect has doubled in 30 years. Is gone from 8%, 9% to 18%. It's really pretty bleak when you think about it. Like, these people, the only way they can survive, the only way they can get food at the grocery store is like buy now, pay later.
Yeah.
Sort of debt, and or put it on a credit card, or whatever. And then there's interest, and the banks are just sitting there collecting interest. And like, there's apparently a I, by the way, pointed this out back, I want to say like about 12 months ago. I said, there will be a wave. The average young person that is drowning in student loan debt, credit card debt, whatever, that can't afford a home, that is just completely hopeless. They're going to get to a point where they go, F my credit score. I don't care. Take it to 0. I don't care. I'm not paying any of this. And of course, that is massively deflationary in a system that cannot afford deflation. And that's apparently starting to happen. I'm not on TikTok, but I have heard on Twitter people talking about the TikTok trend, or X, people talking about this TikTok trend of young people that are just up to their eyeballs, and they're like, I'm done. I'm done with your game. Like, I'm not paying any of this.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? You're going to take my credit score? What? Who cares? I can't buy a house with it. Like, here in LA, you need to make like 280 grand to qualify on not a nice house. So, these kids are making like 60 grand a year. So it's like, okay, the only way I could afford a house is somehow if I 5x'd my income. Oh, no big deal, So like, they're like, who cares about my credit score? I don't care. That is a massively deflationary mindset. And I started to know, the reason I started to talk about it 9 to 12 months ago is because I found myself doing it. I found myself starting to have those thoughts. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm pretty plugged into macro and markets and, whatever. So I'm probably early, right? Like, this will probably eventually hit the average young person. They'll eventually wake up to this, and apparently they're starting to wake up to it now. There's this trend of, I don't know what it's called, but basically just like mass defaults on everything. Credit card, buy now, pay later, buy now, pay never, student loan, everything. Like, so, that the government can't afford to have deflation. We saw deflation, by the way, in revolving credit in August. So the last Fed credit report we got was for September. I think it was September. Yeah, but one of those months, either August or September, we did see a pretty significant deleveraging in terms of revolving credit. That's that credit card debt. And so that could be either people paying down a balance and not, building it back up, or defaults. So we already saw, I think it was a 5.4% annualized contraction. For some reason, the credit report annualizes out a monthly figure. That's how they report the monthly number, is as an annualized figure. I don't know why they do that, but it was 5.4%. If you were to take that month and multiply it by 12, it would work out to a 5.4% contraction per year, which is pretty significant. So I don't know why it started to kind of tick up again in September. This last report, you saw revolving credit actually start to increase again. But yeah, like if young people were smart, that's what they would do. Because yeah, I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that.
It's not. It's just a tough position to be in. It's like it's not like
I get it.
You know.
Yeah, it's like it makes sense. I started to have those thoughts back like late last year. Yeah, it was like late last year. And yeah, look, you know, people don't know this, but like if you stop paying on a credit card, say you owe, I don't know, $5,000 on a credit card, and you just stop paying for like 4 or 5 months, they'll send you a letter. You owe $5,000. You're paying interest on $5,000, and that interest is sky high.
Oh, it's insanely high. I was racked up in credit card debt a couple years ago.
They will send you a letter going, "Hey, you want to pay only $3,000, and we'll forget about it." It's like, sure, yeah, okay. Yeah. So, like, you know, that's not financial advice. That's just a personal anecdote. But I think that that's going to continue with young people. I think that this trend that apparently is over on TikTok, it makes perfect sense why young people are doing that.
It does, and I can't, Dark. I can't find. I can pull up the link. I just can't like copy the link. Unfortunately, because it's in the chat. I don't know. Well, I was going to say. I don't know if that's what it is, or if he was sending me this, which was. I'm sorry to find it. Back to it. Here, I think this is it. So it's possible that he was just sending us to this, which is from just a few minutes ago, talking about working on a 15-year car loans right after talking about your mortgages. And I pulled this up for a brief second while you were chatting. So it might be that he was talking about. But yeah, it's
crazy.
I mean, let me see.
15-year car loan.
Here it is. Here it is. Yep.
Wait, what?
I know. It's unusual whales, so it's probably accurate. I'm not sure.
Like, what are they doing? What?
I know, dude. I know.
What are they doing?
It feels like when Charlie Kirk, that whole thing went down, it felt like they started throwing paint at the wall, like every possible idea they're throwing, and it got to a point where I was like, dude, what? This feels coordinated almost now. Like the paint at the wall feels coordinated. Versus this, it's like they're throwing everything but like a solution. They're
anything
stuff.
but a real solution. Yeah.
What is this? Like, what does that mean? Like 15-year car loan? Like
that's insane.
Huh?
That's insane. But yeah, don't worry, we'll let you deduct it from your tax. It's like,
oh god,
that's insane. That's literally insane, especially given the oh man, that because it's a depreciating asset, right? So you're paying interest on a depreciating asset. Like, look, debt can be very productive. I always point out in all my videos that I go over the debt situation of the government, I always point out debt is not inherently bad. If you can go into, say, 100K of debt to go be a doctor,
yeah,
and then with that 100K of education, you can immediately get out of school and start making 300K a year. That is super smart. Go into that debt. That's productive debt. You're getting a huge return on that dollar of debt that you're going, each dollar of debt you're going into.
If you know you're getting it, you know you're getting it.
Yeah. Like if it's, the problem is we have a bunch of kids going into $200,000 of debt for gender studies degrees.
Yeah.
That they can't find degrees. From what, you know, where I came from in healthcare, I used to see it all the time. People that were in like 80, 90, 100K of student loan debt to go be a psychology major, bachelors, they'd get out. There's no real job for bachelors of psychology. So they would come to work for me as an entry-level $14 an hour thing. Yep. And it's like, okay, so you went into 100K of debt to get a degree where you're just entry level anyways. What was the point of that? That's not productive debt. Especially when it's debt on an asset that is depreciating day by day by day by day by day. And the repair costs are outpacing like inflation, and car insurance is outpacing inflation. And like
I posted this.
you really start to like play that out, like really. And it's even worse than most people imagine.
Yeah, I had posted this. It got me thinking. You were talking about like getting the degree, and yeah, in certain cases, I fully agreed. I remember I thought that I had it. I had this is like a post I made a couple of days ago, but I literally remember
Maryland Hoddle said that basically that exact post about me when he was sitting there listening to me at the conference.
We'll see. Was it really?
Yeah, he played by the rules, and like he screwed. You know, like it's that feeling of like they told me, they told all of our generation, go to school, work hard, be a good person, get the good grades in high school so you can go to a good college, so you can get a degree, so that go into debt, of course, to get that degree, so that you can then go get the good paying job, so that you can afford to buy a house and have a family. That was like how they laid it out. Then everyone ends up with all this unproductive debt. They end up with a labor market that's really screwed for like the median American, especially young person. And you can't afford to have a home, so you can't afford to have a family.
Yep.
So you're like, I played by your rules. Like you defaulted on the social contract.
Exactly. It's such a scam, dude. I can't even tell you. I was so annoyed. I was like, dude, what? And then the next step, which is so funny, is like that during this process of eventually landing here at Wolf and doing content and stuff, there was like a 2-year stint there where I just worked in restaurant types jobs, making a killing. I was raking in cash, like $400, $500 a day on the beach, like doing bartending, bar backing, serving. I was like, dude, I'm making so much money, but I'm already dying. Like I was a year and a half in. I was like, dude, I can't do this. Like I'm working this 5-6 days a week, and I'm exhausted. I'm smoking weed now just to like not be here mentally, because I don't want to be here. Obviously, I have to talk to people all the time, and they hate everything I do. Apparently, like nothing's ever good enough. And I was just like, God, like what do people do to like do something like this? Can't be the only way you make money. It's just by forfeiting every second of your time. What else are people doing? That's what eventually led me into the investing world, and eventually into Bitcoin, when I was like, okay, now how do I make sure this money is not being inflated away? There's not that many options that are solid here that I can believe, because I don't want to buy another college degree. Yeah, that's how I look at a lot of the stocks. Like, I don't want to get this degree that's an IOU that I don't know if it's going to come in, or if like Darkside said it before. I'm going to misquote it, but he was like, you'll eventually get back your cash when you like least need it, kind of thing, and it will be so useless that you'll just be like, I got played. Like I actually got played, but it's all my money, and like there's no way out of this now. And I felt that multiple times. Now I was trying to get my money off a certain exchange, couldn't get it off, and I was just like, I got again. Oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and what do young, tens of millions of young people that all feel the way we're describing, like what do they end up doing? Well, they end up revolting. Like look at was it Myanmar? There was also one in Morocco, I want to say, somewhere in Northern Africa. There was another country where Gen Z literally revolted, like in it's like Bangladesh or Myanmar. They revolted, and they had a Discord election for the next president. Like you piss off the young people, they revolt. You piss off boomers, they won't vote for you. Whatever, from their nursing home. You piss off the 19-year-old, you piss off the 22-year-old, they end up revolting, right? And like, I don't want that for America. I don't want to see blood shed in America I shouldn't have to come to that, but
sure,
that's eventually where it ends up, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that if more people understood why things are the way they are, then the solution becomes, this is why I never hit people over the head in my videos with the solution, what I think the solution is because it's like, well, once you understand to a deep degree the system and the problem and the way the system works and on and on and on, you like the solution is clear. It comes to you. It's called motivational interviewing. It's like a whole concept in psychology and mental health. You get the patient, you get your client to come to the conclusion on their own. And that's like what I try to do. But if young people look, the problem is, unfortunately, like they're all living paycheck to paycheck. So you can't really say, well, if they were just able to save in Bitcoin and they don't have any money left over, you know? So really the problem is the silent depression stuff. Wages have not kept up with anything. Like wages as a share of that M2 money supply have gone down. Wages as a share of GDP has gone down. So if anything, like normies, average people will say, oh, wages have stagnated. It's like, no. Wages have gone down. If you look at personal income as a share of the M2 money supply, so the purchasing power of personal income, which is pretty broad definition of income, is that growing faster than the money supply? Because by definition, if it's not, it doesn't matter. It can go up into the right nominal terms, but if it's not growing faster than the M2 money supply, it doesn't matter. If it's growing in dollar terms, what matters is, does it purchase more stuff? And the only way that happens is if personal income outpaces M2. So you divide personal income by M2. It's down and to the right for 25 years, you know? So it's the same thing with like the average hourly wage in gold terms. It's the same thing with the labor force participation rate. It's the same thing with the S&P 500 price in gold. It's the same thing. Like you just go down the list, money velocity, M2 velocity peaked in 2000. Wages as a share of GDP have been declining for like 50 years. No matter how you measure it. Like I've measured it all sorts of different ways. I've measured it taking the average hourly wage, multiplying by the civilian labor force, taking that as a share of GDP. I've done, and then how many hours the average person works. I've done that. I've done personal income. Like no matter how you calculate it, wages as a share of GDP have been declining for decades. So like that's the problem. If that was not true, then, okay, you know, we all realize the solution is to save in this neutral, scarce, decentralized asset. And eventually over time, right, like you can get to a productive place, but the problem is they don't have any money to save. And it's like, the only thing they really have to do is default. And then eventually violence. So eventually where it goes.
Yeah. I mean, the only solution I found that's even remotely helpful is just like, you can basically only bet on yourself. And so like the only thing I was looking to do is like, okay, if I can stack skills that are higher paying.
Yeah, but that's hard.
Once I knew yesterday, it is exhausting and it's hard. I just don't see any other way. I'm like, if you don't do that.
No, that's what I did.
Yeah, it's the only way. Like you learn why hard assets are the move. Learn about inflation. Like learn about the debasement, learn about the multiple things you brought up here, and then acknowledge that you're like, look, dude, there is quite literally no other way.
I mean, it doesn't have to be. I think every person in America should have a basic understanding of how the system works. Basic, right? But you don't have to go super deep. Like it could be, okay, I'm going to go to welding school, right, and learn how to weld. I'm going to go to this trade college and learn how to light. There's a guy here in LA, in this car club that I used to be in, that has a GT3 that literally just puts pipes underground. Like he digs a hole, they dig a hole, they put a plastic pipe in the hole, and then they put dirt, and he makes enough to drive a GT3, and he owns like 3 houses, you know, and it's like, that's, you know, I took the difficult way where I was like, I'm going to learn about finance and markets and economics, and that's where the money is. So it was kind of just how I fell into it. Trading, and, you know, then that led to macro and all that kind of thing. But like, you know, it can be a trade thing. It could be a physical thing, a skill that you learn to weld, you know, go learn how to be an electrician or whatever. Though I think that sort of thing is going to be, I mean, that is the only other way out, is that every young person in America goes and does something productive with, you know, and works really hard and grinds even more than they already have, you know, which, like, just to be pragmatic, right? Like that's what you and I did, but just to be pragmatic, it's not going to be, you know, there. You get maybe, I don't know, 5% of the population of young people it's willing to do.
And that was always going to be how it is. So like, I remember when I had first started on this journey, I was like, you know, things aren't even that bad yet, but like, they're still like I look at in even when I was like in middle school and I'm kicking the soccer ball trying to make it to college soccer, I was like, dude, there's nobody else in my whole school who's doing this. Every single other person is doing something else right now. Like I'm the only one who stay after practice. I'm like, what? And I was just like, dude, I don't think you're gonna make it. Like I don't think you realize how hard it is to get into some of these schools. Like if you're
It's funny you say
on,
that because I played club soccer too when I was younger.
did you?
From U8 all the way to U17, and like my dad got me these videos, and I would go in my backyard. What, you know, we'd have practice 3 times a week. Then we would have optional like finishing practice, right, where you go and you learn how to finishing side.
Right.
If you're the goalkeeper, it was like doubled as goalkeeper, and like all these extra things, and we would always go and do the extra like additional optional thing. And then in addition to that, I would do drills, like footwork drills and little it was like Ajax tape in my backyard, right? Because it was like I've always had that mindset too, right? Of like, okay, well, if you guys are all going to spend 2 hours a day on this, I'm going to spend 4 hours a day on it, you know?
It's the only way.
But not everyone has that.
I knew they're all going to get in without it. Like they had everyone. Like I was at a school where my dad works there, so they were very well off. We were like the one like normal, chill, like teacher. It was like a teacher, and then like my mom was a piano teacher, so it wasn't like we were balling in any sense. So I couldn't even get into club leagues. I literally couldn't even afford it. And I was like, okay, so you're going to get in probably because you know the guy who knows the coach kind of thing, and you're good. I'm like kind of good, but I'm not as good as you, and I don't have any of the things going for me. Like I don't have another choice. Like this is the only way through. So my whole life has been like that kind of grind up against it, being like, the guy who skipped over kind of thing. I'm like, this is so lame. But at the same time, I always had the sneaky suspicion that I'll rise up out of it somehow. And now, I'm like,
I did it too as a cyclist as well. So not only with soccer, but then I got into like competitive cycling. But I was like a nobody. Yeah.
Wait,
so
you were
like
in competitive cycling. I don't think does anybody know this on Bitcoin?
No one knows. No,
this is huge. This
is
huge.
Yeah, I was 13. I was watching the Tour de France, and I was like, "This is so cool!" Right? I was riding a bike, and I was like, freedom and stuff. But then I was like, "Oh, cool! Like I'm pretty fit from playing soccer." Like it just kind of like started, right? I was riding my bike way more. I was watching the tour, and I was like, "Oh, I could like race." I looked online. There was a race. There was a time trial, which is where you race against the clock. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to train for this. I think it was like 12 or 15K. It was pretty short. I was like, okay, I'm going to look up how to train. So I looked up how to train, and then I just hammered my body every day training on this like $400 steel frame bike. Show up at the time trial. It's a bunch of club racers. I was like 14 or 13 or something. It's a bunch of guys that are with a club that have the disc wheels and the time trial bikes and the fancy jerseys, and I'm just there with like a $400 steel frame bike, no aero bars, nothing, and I placed third at the state champion. Nice. It was a open state champion a championship. And so like I've always had that mindset too. But for me, it was more out of masochism. Like there was something about like cycling or soccer. I also ran cross country where I just loved and it's the same thing with macro, honestly. Like this whole thing, I would just sit and I would get immersed in TradingView or academic econ papers, or like for my brain, like it's a difference between like for your brain versus your body. Right? Like some things are a grind for your body. Yeah. Some things are a grind for your brain. And as my body has gotten aged from decades of soccer and cycling all cross country, it's like, okay, well now I can do it here. And so that's kind of how I looked at it, right? I was like, with trading, okay, if 99% of traders fail, I'm going to spend enough time to learn more than 99% of people that are trading. Seemed pretty straightforward to me. I was like, okay, like, I don't know. And I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, strong. And
that's the only way. And I see Ryan here jumping in. He says, okay, we need some solutions. He says, Bitcoin, definitely. What else? I mean, the only thing I see is what we were just talking about. Like basically, if you're a young person,
like a bunch of young people like grinding like we did.
Yeah.
But like,
there's no other way.
I mean, I think we need to be pragmatic on the same side, which is like, yeah, look, there might be someone out there that has maybe something we said, like spoke to them and they're like, oh, yeah, I think I have that sort of same approach to life. Maybe but like the vast majority of young people are just like spent. They are just tired.
Yeah.
They're just done. And like we have to, I don't know, we got to do something.
There was a quote from Alex Ramosi, I think it was, or maybe Chris Williamson, and they were just like the amount of hours and work that people who won put in is so astronomically higher than the average person thinks it would take. He goes, whatever work you think it took me to get here, he goes, you can go ahead and safely multiply that times 1,000. He goes, that's why I'm here. And I was like, that is basically as true as it gets, because when I look back, I'm like, it never felt like I was putting in 1,000x effort. But you look, you're like, yeah, like maybe it wasn't 1,000, but it was certainly 5 times more, 10 times more. And over the years, you get better and you get smarter, and you start to navigate the game a little bit better, and you start to pick up on things. Like I always knew it'd be content, I just didn't know how. And I remember my thesis when I got into the crypto world was I will become some type of asset on the content side. I'll interview everyone who looks slightly legitimate in the crypto world and see if I can make connections or something. And then maybe I'll grab 5 people from this interview who like me, and then I'll just slowly build up from there. And then, we'll see what happens kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's basically just that. I was just like, dude, like at the restaurant, for example, you make a bunch of money at the end of the night. And then half the team basically is like, okay, like let's all sit at the bar for 2 hours and drink. And I'm like,
yeah,
what? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, how much are you going to spend? And they spend like $50, $100 a lot of times, and they go to the next bar. Yeah. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, no,
and then they're buying,
edit a video. I'm like,
and then they're buying illicit substances. Like,
exactly.
I had friends that worked in a restaurant, like the food service, and yeah, like, look, if young people have leftover savings after earning, right, like Bitcoin, the problem is just these young people, like, how is Bitcoin going to help a 22-year-old that's living paycheck to paycheck here in LA, probably right down a couple apartments over, that's paying, $2,500 to live in a studio apartment, and they're making $55,000 a year. Like, they don't have any money to buy Bitcoin, like Bitcoin can be a great asset. It can have a bunch of great properties, but it can also not solve every single thing. In my opinion, again, that nuance,
it can maybe start the conversation. Like in my head, like the Bitcoin's the only asset I bought where I'm like, okay, this feels different than buying just anything else, really, because I know it's hard. It's a hard asset where I'm like, there's belief behind this thing because the qualities of this make it a good asset to buy. And it maybe can get the chink, like it can get the game started where you're like, okay, now I need to invest $5 a month. Like, how do I make that extra 5? Or now how do I make it $10 or $100 next month? Like what other, like, can I con my brother into helping me out? You know what I mean? So
I think it's hard though, because like the scale of the problem and the speed of the problem, $20 a week is not going to get you there. $20 a week in Bitcoin at a 40, 30 something % cake or somewhere in there, like you're not getting ahead. I'm sorry. You're just not. Maybe when you're 55, you can buy a house. You're right. If you do that for 30 years,
right.
But it's like, the math just doesn't math. If the wages aren't enough, the math is never going to math unless you're gambling in a 1,000x meme coin, right? Which is the unfortunate incentive structure that we were talking about earlier, which is like young people, the meme coin casino should not be as large as it is, but why is it? It is, right? We shouldn't be, as Bitcoiners or whatever, we should not be like hating and, demeaning and criticizing the meme coin casino. We should be asking, why is it so large? Why is there so much capital? Why are so many young people putting their $20 into meme coins? Because once you realize, oh, it's the fact that that's the only way that they're going to make any reasonable standard of living. Yeah. I mean, a lot of us have that like grind and mindset to grind. Look, it's not sexy. Like, I used to literally listen to like 14 hours of macro podcasts a day. And then I would go home from the office and I'd go into my bedroom and I'd turn on Bloomberg TV and I'd go to sleep listening to Bloomberg TV because I felt like, oh, maybe I'll absorb something. And then
Yeah,
like, you know,
I hear that.
when it comes to grind, like I am crazy. I get, yeah, I go like nuts.
I was gonna say, speaking of that, something you have been growing like crazy, which hopefully is your way out as well, is the
Yeah.
YouTube channel here. Yeah, I mean, look, I was gonna say, if you guys are enjoying this conversation at all, there is so much more. It's ridiculous. Like, and you'll recognize the thumbnails; they'll stick out. I highly recommend you guys check this out because he's going hard and it's excellent stuff. Same with the X. I think I have the X pulled up here.
Yeah,
I
even
just got a
that's
text
been,
that was like, crap, there is a meeting here in a few minutes, so I wanted to make sure I pull this up before I forget. But yeah, I mean, you're crushing on the socials, and it's so nice because you're not like you're doing it right. Like your content's good and it's like in depth even. Where I'm like, yeah, most people aren't gonna even go in depth because it's not sexy enough, and they'd rather just do the meme instead. But you're like, no, I'll write a 16 paragraph post and a bunch of charts and stuff. I'll go hard on it, and I'm like, people do appreciate that, and
every now and again.
be good if there was more of that.
Yeah, I've been putting my focus into the YouTube for the serious.
I didn't even have this pulled up. I just realized it's not pulled up. Sorry.
The Twitter is more kind of casual. Sometimes
it
I'll
is,
say
dude,
serious.
but I don't know. The bar is not that the bar is low, but the bar's
whatever.
Look,
whatever I'm doing is working, so I'm not.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not going to change what's working.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought I had this all pulled up. That's why I was.
But yeah, you know, if you want the serious stuff, the YouTube is where I'm putting that.
Agreed. And this is Infonomics. If you guys are watching on YouTube, by the way, be sure to subscribe. And then also his YouTube is down below in the description, so you can just click that and you find it there. If you're on X, same thing. Just go right below the stream. There should be a link that takes us to the YouTube video, and in that YouTube video will be the description. You can also just click Robert's name right above our stream and just go to his page. He has a link tree in his bio. You can find it on YouTube, but definitely be sure you're subscribed to both channels, especially Robert's, because he's putting out daily content, or at least daily or weekly content. It's a lot, and that's in depth. It's really good stuff. So I mean, we went pretty deep. We didn't even have the screens pulled up, but he usually is going pretty hard on these videos and on all the content. You can find some spaces as well. These conversations are fun. It's like our own version of Bloomberg and our own version of like Fox. I see these panels. I'm like, dude, you guys are noobs. Like, you guys are you're gonna get passed by us. Like, nobody's watching this thing. It doesn't even make sense. You guys are saying things and you're not saying anything. You're not willing to have the discussion. So I don't know. I love it. I appreciate it. Yeah,
down
exactly.
to earth. Yep.
Exactly.
Totally
and plus,
agree.
like the chat here, like we're able to actually engage with people,
interact, and
like Ryan's in our spaces. He comes on as a speaker. Darkside, same thing. Like he comes on as a speaker and co-host all the time. And he runs his own shows all the time as well. So
HVAC in the desert. That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Oh,
go out. Yeah, go out to Palm Valley and learn how to HVAC. It's probably a good idea. That's a great idea.
I see Termer that's for the last 5 years barely leaving my house, only working second sets.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. That's what I've done. That's
what I've done as well. That's what I've done as well. I'm not rich.
Sam did the same thing. He's our CMO. He basically grinded. And he literally does not. We don't do anything else. Still, we don't do anything else. So I'm like, I got a few years left in my head. Like Andrew Tate's voice ringing. He's like, you got 10 years. And I'm like, dude, they're probably right. So like, I really don't have time to screw around here. Like, I have to lock in. And so I hope people who are watching this are, if you're in that boat, then extra lock in, I guess. And if you're in the chat, you've made it.
Look, it works. It works.
Yeah.
It worked for me. It worked for you. It can work. Like,
yeah,
that's the hope, in my
well.
opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a big shout out to everyone who came through, especially the guys who are coming in here who've been in the markets a lot longer than us. Really appreciate all the wisdom and just the engagement as well. It's fun. I love chatting with you guys, and it's been a crazy 1.5, 2 years since I've gotten into the Bitcoin world. We didn't even start with Bitcoin spaces. It started randomly after a few months. We were like, we should do a Bitcoin space. Had no clue what that even meant. And I believe I don't know if you're in the first one, but you were in that first
one
round.
Of those first ones.
Yeah, first like 5, I'm pretty sure. I gotta find a screenshot or something. I was such a noob, dude. I
with
had
Gabriel and
Gabriel ran the space. Yeah. Oh man, it's been. I haven't seen Gabriel in his space in a while, actually.
Yeah, me either.
He's engaged on the timeline a little bit, but maybe he's taking a step back from spaces. So Gabriel, if you're watching this, we need you back in a space.
We miss you.
Yeah, man, we do. But yeah, listen, guys, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Like I said, all the stuff is down below in the description for following Robert, and hopefully we'll have him back on very soon. I hope you guys all have an amazing rest of your Monday. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Take care. In 3,